After decades, I finally experienced a night where I was too excited to sleep. However, that excitement quickly vanished as I faced a frustrating event. On the morning of my daughter's wedding, my husband had left without a word. I tried contacting him, but there was no reply, and no note left behind. I clearly remember seeing him preparing last night. Knowing how indifferent he's always been towards household chores and childcare, I felt more anger and confusion than worry. How could he not care about celebrating this special day with our daughter? Suppressing the anger that was boiling up inside me, I told myself I had to go, at least, and began getting ready before leaving the house.
Good morning. Wait, what's wrong, Mom?
There's no what's wrong about it. I can't get in touch with your father. I didn't want to take it out on her, but my tone became harsher than I intended. The anger reignited, and I called my husband again in a fit of frustration. The phone rang endlessly, longer than I had ever experienced in my life. As I counted the rings, 3, 4 times, my anger grew with each one. But I wasn't about to hang up. Finally, on the 8th ring, he picked up.
What is it?
With just those words, my anger reached its peak. What do you mean, what is it? Where are you?
I'm at work. A last-minute business trip came up, and I had to rush out. Besides, I'm not interrupting anything, am I?
Are you kidding me? Just as I was about to raise my voice, I noticed Patricia making a surprising face and signaling to me. With narrowed eyes, she gestured, mouthing the words, "You can hang up now." Confused, I followed her suggestion and ended the call without saying another word. What's going on? Do you know something?
Hee, it's a surprise.
After working non-stop for nearly 30 years, the family flower shop wasn't bustling today, but it was still a cherished place I'd protected all these years. Thank you, Michelle. You always make such beautiful arrangements. I'll be counting on you next time too. A regular customer left with a large bouquet in hand. Little comments like these meant the world to me. Looking back, when I returned to work after my daughter was born, that person showed a lot of concern for me. As my daughter grew older, she would stand beside me, playing florist, or wander around the shop, pointing at different flowers and asking, "What's this?" Now, my daughter has grown up, and is a full-fledged adult. The days when I raised her with the help of my parents feel like just yesterday. Time flies, as they say. On the other hand, my husband's attitude never changed, not before our daughter was born, and not now. He's always been reluctant about me working at the family shop. Perhaps his pride stems from being an employee of a world-famous car manufacturer in America. He constantly uses that to justify his aloofness, and there's no way to reason with him. He's now an executive, and I'm sure his achievements are impressive, but in his private life, he's a complete failure. We've clashed many times in the past, but eventually, I stopped expecting anything from him. After all, he's still the primary breadwinner, and he's done a lot to support our family. But something suspicious has been going on. He's been taking a lot of business trips lately. When the weekend approaches, he always says, "I have to go here and there," and leaves for overnight trips. I have a good idea of what's really behind these trips, but I haven't confronted him about it. At this point, though, I can't ignore my inner voice asking, "So what?" I lost any lingering affection for him long ago. Even if he's out playing around somewhere, the thought doesn't hurt me anymore. Given all this, it's no surprise that Patricia, who grew up watching her workaholic father, doesn't feel close to him. She once told me that her feelings about him were similar to mine. One day, Patricia told me, "I'm bringing my boyfriend over soon," and I felt my heart race. She was finally getting married. I'd heard about him before, and I had a general idea of what kind of person he was. I hadn't met him yet, so I couldn't be sure, but from what I'd heard, he seemed like a decent guy. That made me even more excited. But there next to me was my stern-faced husband, Ken.
Who is this guy? I haven't heard about him.
Yes, you have. I've mentioned him several times. You just weren't listening.
Patricia was right. We'd talked about him plenty at the dinner table during the week. That was when I first learned about her boyfriend as well.
So, where's he from? What does he do for work?
I knew the answers to those questions already because I had been paying attention to her. On the day of the meeting.
Nice to meet you. My name is Danny Carey.
Welcome. I've heard so much about you. Thank you for always taking care of my daughter. Come on in, make yourself at home. My husband didn't even show his face, let alone say a word. He must have thought sitting in the back of the house was the proper way for a father to act. I didn't mind if he wanted to do that, but I wished he had at least helped out with raising our daughter. Knowing everything, I couldn't help but find it both ridiculous and deeply embarrassing. As expected, my husband sat cross-legged in the back, performing the role of the old-fashioned stubborn dad. The table, set with special tea and snacks, was lively, except for him. We mainly talked about Patricia's childhood. She was like this at that age, in high school. She did that, just light-hearted stories. Patricia's face remained flushed the entire time. As for Danny, he seemed just as decent as Patricia had described, and made a great impression. After a while, my husband finally spoke up.
What do you do for work?
I work for an IT company. It's not a big-name firm or anything.
What's your income?
He's stable enough to live on his own already. He said he didn't want to burden Mom.
The moment he heard that, my husband's face, seated next to me, visibly changed. As an executive, he didn't miss the tiniest details hidden in people's words.
He didn't want to burden Mom. Does that mean he was raised by a single parent?
Hey, that's rude.
No, it's okay. It's true.
Well, that says a lot about where you come from. Are you sure about this?
I nearly fainted at the sheer rudeness of his words. I hadn't intended to criticize him for playing the stubborn dad. But after hearing those words, there was no way I could stay silent. I stood up, driven by impulse, and shouted in a voice even I didn't recognize. How could you say such a thing? That's beyond inappropriate. Even my husband seemed taken aback for a moment, but he quickly regained his usual stern demeanor and had the audacity to retort.
But it's true. Has he even had a proper education?
Enough. Apologize to Danny. My husband has always been like that. He's a firm believer in academic elitism, and that's why he still looks down on me for not going to college. The fact that I took over the family flower shop was never the real issue. He likely stopped trying to see any value in me a long time ago. I could only imagine what Danny felt, having his past dug up like that. But when I turned to look at him after saying my piece, I was surprised to find that he was calm, even concerned about me. How could this be? I wondered as the anger momentarily subsided, and then he spoke up.
It's all right. Thank you for standing up for me.
Oddly enough, his words didn't carry any trace of hesitation or reproach.
I knew I shouldn't have brought him over while Dad was here.
Patricia muttered under her breath, and perhaps her words struck something in my husband's heart as well. He sat there, sulking, without saying another word. With a little over a month left until the wedding, I was filled with both excitement and growing anxiety. The source of my worry, of course, was my husband, Ken. Since then, Danny had come over a few times to help Patricia prepare for the wedding, but my husband refused to open up or even show his face. Instead, he continued to grumble when our daughter wasn't around. What exactly is he so dissatisfied with? He's pleasant, has a straightforward personality, and leads a stable life. His academic background isn't bad either. Had he earned more than me, my husband would have complained about that as well. Is it really that troubling to him that he grew up in a single-parent household? When it comes to child rearing, our situation is almost identical. I just wanted him to avoid causing any trouble until the ceremony concluded peacefully. With that sole thought in mind, I finally decided to confront my husband. No matter what you say or how much you dislike it, I will trust the person Patricia believes in. You have no right or authority to decide anything here, and you're not qualified to. Whatever success you may have at work doesn't apply at home. So, at the very least, be quiet until the wedding is over. My husband just let out a scoff, saying nothing. I have no idea how effective my words would be, but given his behavior up to this point, I had to drive the point home. I refused to let petty squabbles ruin the most radiant day of my daughter's life. The night before the wedding, I saw my husband stationed in front of the closet, spending an unusually long time picking out his clothes. Watching him from outside the room, I felt relieved. For all his grumbling, skipping our daughter's big day wasn't an option. It's absurd to feel this relieved over something so obvious, something I never imagined would be an issue. And then, the day arrived. I woke up from a restless night, the excitement I hadn't felt in years overcoming the lingering drowsiness. As I got out of bed, still distracted, I noticed something odd, an unusual silence in the house. It had been ages since we slept in separate rooms. No, more than ages. It might have been since our daughter was born that we hadn't shared the same bed. That's how little I remembered it. So, I had no way of knowing when my husband got out of bed in the middle of the night. I searched the house without even washing my face, but he was nowhere to be found. A terrible thought crossed my mind, so I tried calling him, but the phone wouldn't connect. Did he seriously prioritize business trips over today of all days? Even if he really was on a business trip, how cold-hearted must he be to leave without a single word beforehand? But there was no time to dwell on my boiling frustration. I had no choice but to stay calm and get ready.
Good morning. Wait, Mom, what's wrong?
What's wrong? I can't get in touch with your father. I didn't want to take it out on her, but my tone inevitably sharpened. My anger flared up again, and in that heat, I called my husband once more. It felt like the longest ringtone I had ever heard in my life. With each repetition, 3 times, 4 times, the fury inside me grew stronger. But I had no intention of hanging up. On the 8th ring, he finally answered.
What is it?
That one phrase pushed my anger to its limit. What do you mean? What is it? Where are you right now?
I'm at work. An urgent trip came up, so I had to leave in a hurry. I'm not bothering anyone, am I?
You've got to be kidding me. Just as I was about to raise my voice, I caught sight of Patricia giving me an unexpected look and signaling something with her eyes. She was smiling softly, mouthing the words, "It's fine, you can hang up." Puzzled, I followed her lead and ended the call without another word. What's going on? Do you know something? She giggled.
It's a surprise.
The letter to the bride and groom was being read aloud, but my mind was elsewhere. The words that would normally bring me to tears weren't registering at all. The couple, on the other hand, listened intently, their faces clearly moved even if they weren't crying. All I felt was a deep sense of guilt toward Danny and his mother. Before the ceremony began, Patricia had asked me to call her father when it was time for her speech. That moment was approaching fast. Since she had mentioned a surprise, I could only guess that something was in the works, but I had no clue what it might be. Patricia stepped up to the podium. As the staff adjusted the mic, she shot me a meaningful glance and nodded. That must have been the signal. With no other option and no time to think, I did exactly as Patricia had instructed. Calling it a surprise made it sound exciting, but honestly, I felt more like I was being strung along without knowing anything. I didn't feel irritated, but it was undeniably perplexing. Everything seemed just slightly off, as if I were witnessing some kind of performance that only resembled a wedding.
Didn't I say I was at work? Stop calling me.
My husband grumbled on the other end, but I ignored him and put Patricia's letter to us, her parents, on speakerphone. If I trusted Patricia, then surely the answer to all of this lay in her words.
I met someone truly wonderful. Kind-hearted, deeply understanding, and always considerate. To Danny's mother, who raised such a person, and to his father, who is here with us today, I extend my deepest gratitude.
His father is here. When I greeted them earlier, I had only met Danny's mother. And I had heard that he was raised in a single-parent household. I wondered if I'd misheard.
And now,
Patricia continued.
we'd like to introduce our special guest, Joe Sheen. Please come on stage.
What?
My husband and I had the same reaction. We were speechless. Joe Sheen, the CEO of Sheen Motors? That's the president of my husband's company.
Thank you all for coming today to celebrate the union of the bride and groom. I am Joe Sheen, the biological father of the groom, Danny. Please give the couple another round of applause.
Wait. What did he say? Joe? Biological father.
My husband, clearly bewildered on the phone, was struggling to make sense of the situation. It's hard to imagine him flustered, but after 30 years together, I could tell he was panicking. Though he could have hung up, he seemed too stunned to even do that. After the applause subsided, Joe spoke again with a warm smile.
Thank you. Now, may I ask, do any of you enjoy suspense? I see quite a few hands. In that case, the next part of this event may just captivate you. It's a small performance, nowhere near as dazzling as the bride and groom, but just a little entertainment. Ms. Michelle, could you kindly bring me that phone?
My name suddenly came up. With the entire room watching in breathless silence, I hurriedly made my way to the stage. Thank you for all you've done for my husband. Should I hand over the phone while it's still connected to him? As I approached, I saw Joe up close and knew for sure. It was him. What on earth was he about to do? A wave of unease washed over me.
Yes, thank you.
As I started to walk back to my seat, a staff member appeared out of nowhere, quietly offering me a chair near the stage. I had no reason to refuse, so I sat down on the edge, still unsure of what was unfolding. Joe spoke into the phone.
Hello, Ken. Fancy running into you like this. What a small world. But tell me, why aren't you here?
I could barely hear my husband's trembling voice over the phone.
Joe? Is that you, sir?
Joe's voice grew darker.
Yes, the very same. So, where exactly are you, leaving your daughter's wedding behind?
My husband scrambled to come up with an excuse.
It's a business trip. An urgent matter came up, and I had to leave.
No, it didn't.
Joe cut him off.
I checked before I came here. You applied for leave due to family matters, and no one assigned you any work. If you don't believe me, ask Candace. She's right there.
Huh? Why is your secretary there? I came here alone.
Joe chuckled.
Candace. Funny, my secretary's name is Marie. I've never heard of a Candace before.
Joe continued calmly, and the room, which had been silent, began to stir with whispers. I had met Joe's secretary Marie several times, so I knew her well. It seemed my husband had fallen right into a trap. And that could only mean one thing. He was having an affair.
And one more thing. Marie is under suspicion of embezzling from the company. I doubt it concerns you, but if you happen to see her, please pass it along.
Wait, boss. This is a misunderstanding. I'm not having an affair, and I've never touched the company's money.
A faint sob escaped him. Could he really have gone so far as to commit a crime? A seed of doubt began to take root, though there was no way to confirm it at the moment.
Oh, I'm sure you'll deny it all you want. But, truth be told, none of that matters. The real issue here is that you insulted my son. Your daughter told me all about it. As a man, as a father, and as a human being, you're a complete failure.
That was the final blow. Watching Joe's retreating figure, I quietly realized it was all over.
I'm sorry for keeping quiet, Mom. I just needed to catch him off guard at the right moment and push for a breakup.
That night, after the ceremony, my daughter finally revealed the truth. She had learned about her father's misdeeds long before, back when she and Danny first got engaged. The entire wedding drama had been part of a grand plan orchestrated by Patricia, Danny, and Joe. Their goal? To publicly expose her father's affair and criminal activities and push me to decide on a divorce. First, there was his relationship with Joe's secretary, Marie. His frequent weekend business trips were all to see her. Though surprising, the fact that he was often away wasn't too much of a shock, as I had long suspected something was amiss. What hurt more was the embezzlement. This was a serious crime. According to Joe, there was already an ongoing criminal investigation, and my husband was the prime suspect. Marie had not only been his lover but had also helped him in his crimes.
Mom, I want you to live more freely. You've always acted like you hated the flower shop, and meanwhile, Dad was off doing whatever he pleased. It's absurd. So now, you should do what you love. I'm married now, after all.
If you put it that way. In truth, I had no lingering attachment. Being freed from the chains of disdain and neglect was a relief. Though I had been caught off guard, I was grateful for the kindness behind the plan. It was thanks to them that I made another significant life decision.
Mom, where should I put this pot?
Over there. Just leave it in front of the shelf, and I'll take care of it later. Though my daughter had seemed fully independent after her marriage, a few months later, she quit her job, calling it her post-wedding resignation, and asked to help out at the family flower shop. While she had never expressed any interest in working at the shop before, I couldn't think of a reason to refuse. When I asked her why she wanted to help, she simply said,
Because I'm your daughter.
When I had decided to take over the shop all those years ago, I can't remember exactly what I said to convince myself. But I vaguely recall saying something similar. And just like that, I was swayed by my daughter's simple words. Now, I work with her as her boss, mentor, and mother. I've embraced the changes in my life, thriving and pouring my energy into work. Though the shop isn't booming, I've never felt lighter, and I can finally enjoy life. I owe it all to my daughter, her husband, and Joe. One other thing has changed. Ever since the wedding, Patricia has been bringing Danny to the shop more often.
I'll help out too.
How many times in 30 years had those words saved me? Not many, but the fact that Danny constantly showed care and offered to help made a world of difference. Comparing him to his predecessor felt almost insulting. The difference was night and day. Thank you, but really, your kindness is more than enough. Whenever my daughter and her husband visited, we would always share dinner together. The meals weren't anything extravagant, but the atmosphere was brighter than I'd ever known.
Wow, this is incredible.
He said, as he took a bite of the braised pork belly. It was a simple dish, but seeing him enjoy it made me smile. He never reacted like that. It's an old family recipe, passed down through the generations.
What? We had a secret recipe? You should have taught me before I got married.
I'm just kidding. It's all about knowing the right balance. You're not quite there yet, Patricia.
Rude. That was totally unnecessary.
Don't worry, Patricia's cooking is great too.
my daughter would undoubtedly find happiness. She had such a wonderful person by her side.
Excuse me.
Welcome. Oh, Joe. It's been a while.
No need for formalities. Here, I couldn't very well bring fresh flowers as a gift to a florist, so I brought you some sweets instead. I hope you'll accept them.
It was hard to believe that 6 months had passed since everything happened. Time is such a fleeting thing. Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you.
Not at all. May I have a moment of your time?
Of course. Is something the matter? He had come to inform me that my ex-husband had been sentenced to prison for embezzlement. Not only him but Marie, his accomplice, had also received the same punishment. Even though I had long stopped caring about him, the news stirred no real emotions in me. It was only natural. I had received a divorce settlement half a year ago, and there was nothing left tying us together. Why had Joe come to deliver the news personally?
There's something else I'd like to apologize for.
An apology? What for? I couldn't recall anything that would warrant it, and my guard went up.
It's about the wedding. I dismissed everything as a spectacle, but I realize now that it impacted your life in a profound way. My remarks were careless. I'm deeply sorry.
As soon as he finished, he bowed deeply. Please, raise your head. That's all in the past now, and I'm happy with where my life is. I have you and my daughter's family to thank for that. I couldn't possibly hold any grudge. After a pause, I added, besides, I'm sure it was Patricia's idea, wasn't it? She told me she wanted to expose him. So please, don't trouble yourself over it. Joe finally looked up, his face reflecting a mixture of emotions.
So, there really is no hiding things from a mother, is there? You have my respect. As you know, I wasn't around much to raise Danny, so I'm unfit as a father. It pains me to ask this, but do you think his mother raised him well?
Yes. He's turned out to be a wonderful man. What did you think of this story? Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.